Good day, everyone. Today, we will discuss approaches to community development. Let's begin with a current issue. The proposed establishment of Pax Silica in the Philippines has generated different views among people and groups. Some may support it. Others may oppose it. Still others may support it but want certain changes or safeguards. Now, here's the important question. When people face the same community issue but have different views, how can they work toward addressing the issue? There is no need to answer that immediately. Keep that question in mind as we go through the lesson. Today, we will examine different approaches that communities can use to respond to their concerns and pursue development. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to differentiate the different approaches to community development. You should also be able to explain the phases of community action, distinguish needs assessment from resource assessment, and explain participatory action planning, resource mobilization, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Finally, you should be able to explain the roles of empowerment and advocacy in community development. As we go through the lesson, try to connect these concepts rather than treating them as separate terms. When we talk about approaches to community development, we are referring to different ways of organizing people, resources, knowledge, and action to address community concerns. These approaches differ in several ways. Who participates? Who makes decisions? Where does expertise come from? And how is collective action organized? It is also important to remember that different approaches do not necessarily have to be used separately. Depending on the situation and the goals of the community, several approaches may be used together. The first is the self-help approach. This approach emphasizes processes that encourage community members to work together, collaborate, formulate decisions, and take action to improve community conditions. The central idea is simple. The community works together to address its own concerns. The emphasis is therefore on cooperation and the active role of community members. The next is the conflict approach. This involves the deliberation and confrontation of those occupying positions of authority and professional officials who are responsible for decision-making for the community. The word conflict here does not necessarily mean violence. It can involve questioning, challenging, debating, negotiating, or demanding accountability from those who have authority. The key idea is that community concerns may sometimes require communities to engage directly with those who make decisions. The technical assistance approach employs external actors and experts to address community issues. For example, a community may need specialized knowledge that is not readily available within the community. It may therefore seek assistance from professionals, technical specialists, organizations, or other experts. The key idea is: external expertise is used to help address community concerns. Community organizing is the process of building power by involving community members in identifying their problems. The important word here is power. People who experience a problem may individually feel that they have little ability to change it. But when they organize, they can identify shared concerns, build relationships, and develop the capacity to act collectively. So the key idea is: people organize around issues that affect them and develop the capacity to act collectively. Next is community resource management. This is a participatory process that enables communities to manage their own resources for their benefit. Resources can include natural resources, facilities, knowledge, skills, and human resources. The important point is that the community is not simply a recipient of resources. It participates in managing resources for its own benefit. The last approach in our list is community education and learning. This refers to the conscious efforts of community members to develop knowledge and understanding relevant to community concerns. Why is this important? Because meaningful participation requires people to understand the issues they are dealing with. Knowledge can therefore strengthen community participation and action. Let's put the 6 approaches together. The self-help approach emphasizes community cooperation. The conflict approach emphasizes deliberation and confrontation. The technical assistance approach uses external expertise. Community organizing focuses on building community power. Community resource management focuses on managing community resources. And community education and learning focuses on developing community knowledge. So these approaches answer an important question. How can we work with a community to address its concerns? But choosing an approach is only the beginning. Eventually, the community has to organize actual action. Community action generally moves through a process. It begins with a concern. The community then seeks to understand the situation. It moves into planning. Resources and people are mobilized. The plan is implemented. Progress is monitored. And the results are evaluated. The important point is that community development is a process, not a single activity. This brings us to community action planning. Community action planning plays an important role in addressing community issues and solving problems. It brings community members together to determine what needs to be addressed, what should be done, who should participate, and how the action will be carried out and assessed. In other words, it helps turn a community concern into an organized response. A community action plan specifically defines the scope and parameters of community action based on the community's profile. A practical action plan identifies the problem, goal, objectives, activities, responsibilities, timeline, resources, success indicators, and evaluation. Notice that this is more than simply listing activities. A good plan connects the problem to the desired result and identifies who will do what, when it will happen, what is needed, and how we will know whether it worked. The community action process in our lesson has 7 phases. First, establishing links and partnerships. Second, community profiling. Third, needs and resource assessment. Fourth, participatory action planning and leadership development. Fifth, resource mobilization. Sixth, plan implementation. And seventh, monitoring and evaluation. We will now look at each phase. The first phase is establishing links and partnership building with local groups. Community action rarely succeeds when one person or one organization works alone. The community needs to identify people and organizations that should be involved, build relationships with them, and establish cooperation. The basic question is: who needs to be involved? The second phase is community profiling. Community profiling provides a descriptive insight into the attributes and conditions of a community. It helps us understand who makes up the community, what its conditions are, what organizations exist, what resources are available, and what concerns the community faces. In simple terms, what is this community like? We need to understand the community before deciding what should be done. The third phase is needs and resource assessment. A need assessment helps determine what the community considers valuable and what problems and issues should be addressed. A resource assessment, on the other hand, helps identify resources that can be accessed to address those needs. So remember, needs tell us what requires attention. Resources tell us what can help. This is important because community development should not look only at what a community lacks. It should also recognize what the community already has. The fourth phase is participatory action planning. This involves the open and inclusive engagement of groups and individuals in a community who have decided to pursue a goal or solve a problem. It brings together community concerns, available resources, shared goals, possible solutions, and responsibilities. The central question is: what should we do together? The word participatory is important. The plan should not simply be imposed on the community. People who are part of the community should have an opportunity to participate in developing the response. Once the community understands the problem, action planning generally involves several steps. First, define the priority problem. Second, set the goal. Third, identify specific objectives. Fourth, choose strategies and activities. Fifth, assign responsibilities. Sixth, establish a timeline. Seventh, identify the necessary resources. Eighth, establish indicators of success. And finally, plan how the action will be monitored and evaluated. The important idea is: a plan turns decisions into organized action. Participatory action planning also provides opportunities for leadership development. Community members can develop their ability to make decisions, coordinate activities, assume responsibility, communicate with others, and lead collective action. This gives us an important principle. Community action should develop people as well as projects. If a community completes a project but does not become more capable in the process, an important opportunity for development may have been missed. The fifth phase is resource mobilization. Resource mobilization is the process of raising, maintaining, and sustaining the resources needed for community action. These resources can include people, money, materials, facilities, knowledge, skills, and partnerships. The key question is: what do we need to make the plan possible? A good plan is only useful if the community can mobilize what is necessary to implement it. The sixth phase is plan implementation. This is where the actual and concrete tasks and activities are carried out. This is the point at which the community moves from planning to action. Implementation requires coordination and responsibility. At the same time, implementation does not mean that the community can never adjust the plan. When circumstances change, appropriate adjustments may be necessary. The seventh phase includes monitoring. Monitoring focuses on the status and progress of tasks and activities during implementation. It asks questions such as: are activities being completed? Are we following the plan? What problems have emerged? What needs to be adjusted? So remember, monitoring tells us what is happening while the plan is being implemented. Now let's distinguish monitoring from evaluation. Evaluation design enables implementers to revisit, countercheck, and assess the progress and results of implementation. Monitoring asks: what is happening? Evaluation asks: what did we accomplish and what changed? So monitoring is primarily concerned with following implementation, while evaluation helps us learn about the effectiveness and results of the intervention. There are 3 types of evaluation presented in our lesson. Process evaluation focuses on how implementation is going. It is conducted during implementation and allows the community to learn and make adjustments. Summative evaluation focuses on what was accomplished. It is conducted after the completion of the plan or project. And impact evaluation focuses on what changed because of the intervention. It examines the outcomes or changes resulting from the project or program. A simple way to remember them is: process, how did we do it? Summative, what did we accomplish? Impact, what changed? Evaluation should not simply mark the end of community action. Think of it as a cycle. We begin with action. We monitor what is happening. We evaluate. We learn from the results. We make adjustments. And those lessons can lead to improved action. So community development is not simply plan, act, end. Instead, it can become action, monitoring, evaluation, learning, adjustment, improved action. This is why community development is a continuing cycle of action, learning, and improvement. Community development should strengthen the community's ability to address future concerns. Empowerment strengthens the community's knowledge, skills, leadership, organization, and decision-making capacity. Advocacy, meanwhile, involves efforts to raise awareness, communicate community concerns, build alliances, engage decision-makers, and influence policies, institutions, or other actors. So community development is not only about addressing one immediate problem. It can also increase the community's ability to speak, organize, decide, and act. Let's put the entire process together. We begin by understanding the community through profiling and assessment. We then plan by developing goals, strategies, responsibilities, and identifying resources. We act by mobilizing resources and implementing the plan. We learn by monitoring, evaluating, and improving our actions. And ultimately, we seek to empower the community by strengthening its capacity to address future concerns. So community development can be understood as a continuing process of understanding, planning, action, learning, empowerment. Let us return to the question we asked at the beginning. When people face the same community issue but have different views, how can they work toward addressing the issue? There may not be one approach that fits every situation. What matters is that communities are able to understand their concerns, organize their people and resources, participate in decisions, take collective action, learn from experience, and become more capable of addressing future challenges. And that brings us to our final thought. A community develops not only when its problems are addressed, but when its people become more capable of addressing them together. Thank you.